Okay, I'm speaking with Laramie County Commissioner Linda Heath, and we're discussing the vote on the upcoming fifth penny sales tax on the November election ballot. First and foremost, people get the fifth and the sixth mixed up. They're not the same thing.
No, they're not the same thing. The fifth penny is basically a general fund revenue tax, whereas the sixth penny deals with specific projects that are voter approved and can only be used for those projects.
Now, some of the things the fifth penny does go for include things like roads, law enforcement, specifically the sheriff's department, libraries, fire districts, health and welfare, and parks. Now, something you mentioned to me in a previous interview, people are under the impression that their property taxes pay for road maintenance. That's incorrect.
That is incorrect. If you look at your mill levy statement or your property tax statement that we all received here about 1st of September, thereabouts, and really pay attention on there. Most of it goes for schools, actually, between LCCC and state school fund and county school fund. Those are all schools. Mm-hmm. You don't see a whole lot on there for just the, for roads. You don't see anything on there for roads, in fact. You might have some special districts, but no roads.
So the idea I'm paying for the roads already with my property taxes is simply incorrect.
That is correct.
Okay, now some of the money raised by these revenues, generally we're in the $6 to $7 million category, I guess. Would that be accurate over the last few years?
Yeah, for the county anyway. The dollar amounts have been quite a bit higher for the rest, overall. But this is basically what it's been for the county.
And just to specify here, you're here to talk about the county and what they would do. You're not here to talk about the city of Cheyenne.
That's correct. I will let the representatives from the city of Cheyenne come in and talk about their specific projects and go into more detail.
Now, the big bulk of the money raised goes to public works. Do I have that correct?
Yes.
Almost 70%. Now, but a sizable chunk also goes to things like library, health and welfare. What's that?
Well, health and welfare, actually, we have specified some specific organizations that we work with on that. I want to make sure that I get the right ones listed here. Cheyenne Housing Authority, Pine Bluff Senior Center, Meals on Wheels are some of the major ones. And then we also contribute money to Peak Wellness. A lot of this is for drug and mental health counseling. They also go out to Eastern Laramie County and provide those services out there. Needs, Camilla Shelter, Safe Harbor, Alcohol Receiving Center, Safe House Cheyenne, and Cheyenne Health and Wellness. So, these are the projects that we look at. We do have some additional funds that if we, end up with some extra, sometimes we will use those for other entities, such as the American Red Cross, Boys and Girls Club, HealthWorks, providing increased access for primary care. And they also have pharmacy services for low income. We generally focus on those that are, the poor and needy that need assistance. Interesting on the American Red Cross, they provide disaster preparedness and response services. So when we had the hailstorm out in Pine Bluffs, we had the tornado over in Federal, the tornado out by Carpenter. They were available to give assistance, providing temporary housing. In fact, the residents out in Federal are still in hotels. They haven't gotten to the point where their homes are back and livable again. In fact, they've all scraped from their foundations. So that immediate assistance, they're not providing, Red Cross doesn't provide the continual assistance. They provide it to a point, and then the insurance companies have to take over. Mm-hmm. But that immediate emergency is Red Cross.
Now, I also see public safety. Is that law enforcement, or does that go beyond that?
Public safety is law enforcement.
Okay.
That generally goes into purchasing of vehicles, purchasing of the upgrades, what they call the upfittings for those particular vehicles, your radios, your computers. If you have a K9 unit, they have special equipment in there that allows the vehicle to be monitored as to whether or not it gets too hot. It can automatically roll down the windows. It can alert the officer of the needs of that animal that's within the unit. So it varies as to what that costs. You're looking at anywhere from $25,000 to $31,000 depending on the function of the vehicle.
Now, I happen to know the Sheriff's Department's asking for 4 extra positions. Would that money come from here, or would that come from somewhere else?
That comes from our general fund.
So it would not come from this?
No.
Okay.
In fact, they got their 4 extra positions.
So that's already been approved?
That's already been approved in our budget.
Now, Public Works, road maintenance, that's the big bulk of this. How important is this to maintaining our roads?
Oh, gosh, it is very, very important. It's a major part of their budget, actually. It goes to purchase equipment, fuel, maintenance, and road repair. In fact, just on our last agenda, they were trading in some road graders and some belly dump and pup trucks that they use for hauling gravel. You know, you think that, well, this vehicle might be a 2001 model. Well, you're thinking, okay, let's look at this. This is an 18-year-old vehicle. But our gravel pit is out north of Hillsdale, the one that we use to gravel our roads with. And if we're graveling roads that are over in the Table Mountain area, they only get maybe 4 to 8 loads a day out of there just because of the travel time. But that's a lot of miles you're putting on those trucks. You know, we hang on to them as long as we possibly can, sometimes welding the boxes back together. And, you know, you get to the point you can only put so many patches on before you have to replace that equipment. And the same with our road graders. We're looking at maintaining around 1,500 miles of roads. We have the most miles of roads in a county in the state. Only Sweetwater County comes close to us. So, you know, that takes a lot of, you know, time to get out there. Some of these roads, even with our oil traffic, we're on, you know, 2 and 3 times a week just trying to hold them together.
Now, I would sort of infer that includes snow removal and that sort of thing,
Yes,
correct?
it does.
Okay. And again, we're talking about the 5th penny sales tax on the November election ballot. I'm speaking with Laramie County Commissioner Linda Heath. Now, some of the projects you've got listed here, the West Allison Road Reconstruction Project, the Road 2013 Overlay Project, these are some of the projects that the money would come from if it's approved by voters. Do I have that right?
Well, these are projects that we actually did between 2015 and 2018 with the last 5th penny allocation. The West Allison Road project was a widening of West Allison Road from, let's see, was it the high school down to, or Johnson High School down to College, or not College, but South Greeley Highway, adding sidewalks and making that safer. Road 213 overlay, this is a piece of paved road that we have between Hillsdale and Burns. You know, over time with all of the truck traffic and everything, it was broken up. We actually had to delay that in order to finish the, or to do the Road 162 overlay, which is the Albin to LaGrange Road. We had an early frost that caused some issues with the asphalt out there, and it wasn't one of these things that we could put it off any longer. We did a partnership with YDOT in order to get that done, but it also meant that we had to take the money that we had set aside for the Hillsdale Burns Road and apply it to the Albin LaGrange Road in order to get that project done. But we do have both of them done. Avenue B2 is a Safe Routes to School project. We did this in conjunction with the MPO. It connects 2 trailer parks down there and provides for safe travel to Afflerbach Elementary School for those students. We also widened it so that we could actually have a street in between there as well, so that our law enforcement and emergency responders have access to those 2 trailer parks and are able to travel through there for emergency purposes.
Glenn, did you have anything that you want to jump in with? Now, you also pay for law enforcement for things like patrol cars. What are upfittings? I don't know what those are.
Well, the upfittings are the, you know, whatever equipment is in the vehicle. I mentioned it before with the K9 units, and that's why you see such a spread in there. You also, we are going to more of the 4-wheel drive vehicles. many of our calls are, you think of bad weather, you think of the rural areas. The four-wheel drive vehicles just handle those particular calls in that particular area much better than the cars do. And we're finding that this particular model that we're using, the Explorer, has more room inside in that front seat area, so that the equipment that the guys are using, the radios, the computers, whatever they have in there, fits better inside those vehicles than it does inside the cars, because the Ford Tauruses that we were using have gotten smaller, and so there's not as much room.
Well, it just makes sense. Living in Wyoming, we have rough winters. Four-wheel drive sometimes is probably the only option in some of the backcountry areas, I would think. So
one of our other vehicles that we have is a 3/4 ton pickup that pulls our bomb squad equipment.
Oh, okay.
Explosive ordnances. You never know when you're going to use it. You hope you never have to, but we have the equipment in there to handle explosives. We have a team trained. We work with the Cheyenne Police Department with that as well. It's one of those shared items that we have.
And that does get called out on occasion?
It does get called out, yes.
I did not have it there if we needed it, that's for sure. Now, you also do some things at the library. Obviously, people think of the library, they think of books, but it goes beyond that.
There are a lot more items over there to check out beyond the books. However, most of the fifth penny money goes for any material over there that they do not charge a fee to check out. So your videos, DVDs are two of the items that aren't covered by that.
And anytime you check out a book at the library, I've noticed this myself, it'll say this was paid for through the fifth penny sales tax.
Well, it'll have a little green sticker green and white sticker that says 1% on it, and that's indicative of it being paid for with the fifth penny funds.
By the way, I should mention, is this vote in November, is that for a biennium or for 1 year?
It is for a 4-year.
For a 4-year. So we won't vote on this again until 2022.
Correct.
And then we have the sixth penny, I think, in 2020. Do I have that right?
Providing we have completed the collections.
Does that look like that'll happen? Or
I hate to try and guess what the economy is going to do. We were going gangbusters in 2014, and things slowed down suddenly, and so the collections, your sales tax revenues kind of, corresponded with that, and things are picking up now, and we're smiling a little easier, but there's no guarantee that, it'll be collected at the end of that period. That's what the projection is.
Okay. Now, back to the fifth penny, it also goes for fire protection in Laramie County for 9 fire districts.
We have 9 fire districts in Laramie County, all of them volunteer. What these funds go for is to, again, purchase equipment, apparatus, tools that they use, whether it be the breathing packs that they use when they go into fires, whether it's the trucks, you name it, whatever they need, they can use that money for. But the dollar amount that is collected for that is only around $600,000 in their share. So needless to say, when you're looking at buying a brand new truck that can cost you $500,000, depending on what it's equipped with, almost $600,000 isn't going to go very far. So the fire chiefs, what they actually do, they take the pot of money that they get every year. They look at what's there. They look at the needs of the fire districts, and they will prioritize those needs as to who needs this most, and give them a certain amount of money. And it's gotten to the point where this money largely is being used to help secure loans and grants through match money. The fire districts are having to save money up to come up with some of the money to purchase this equipment. They're buying trucks from elsewhere, refitting them, doing engine work on them, whatever they need to do to be able to get the equipment that we need for our fire districts. And here in September, they had several trucks that were down, and it was as dry as it was, and still is. We haven't had the moisture. Fire danger is extremely high, and you get windy days like we had yesterday and again today. You get any kind of a fire, and it can stretch their resources because a lot of the trucks were broken down at the time. So I'm hoping they managed to get them back up and running. I haven't heard. So
Because our county is growing a little bit economically, and we're seeing more oil exploration, are we seeing more demand for some of these fire districts? Or
We're seeing some. Really, when you stop and look at what the oil companies are doing, if you look at the pads, they've got the big berms around each of the pads. That area inside is scraped bare, so that if there is a fire there and there's a leakage, it'll be contained within that pad, but there's no vegetation around it to burn. So it's just that maybe the tanks, or a well or whatever that is on fire, and they can shut those off remotely so that there's no longer any fuel going to that fire, and then they just let it burn out. But the fire districts will respond and keep an eye on what's going on around there, just in case that they need to put out any fires. And at this point in time, they haven't had anything get away from them.
so it's not the fire hazard some people might assume.
That's correct.
Okay, I'm speaking with Commissioner Linda Heath. We're talking about the fifth penny sales tax coming up on the election ballot here in a month for the next 4 years. Now, we mentioned the fire districts. I think we pretty well covered that. Moving on to some of the other topics. You also supplement some of the needed apparatus. Again, that's for the fire department. Moving on to some other areas. Now, you also provide money for senior citizen services, correct?
We, again, that's looking at the poor and needy, somewhat disadvantaged, with the Meals on Wheels, the Senior Citizen Center, the activities that they provide. It's not just that they come in and eat during the noon hour. Sometimes that's the only social interaction some of those elderly folks have, is when they come into that. And it's kind of like the coffee shop. Everybody went to McDonald's or the local cafe and had coffee, and that's kind of what the Senior Citizens Center in many ways is. It's that connection for those local residents. Meals on Wheels is in the process of adding on a new kitchen. The one that they have has really strapped their capacity. They have a greater need, and so they will be adding on a kitchen. They received some state funding to help build that, but it's going to increase their capacity. I believe it's up to about 400 meals a day. They have volunteers that'll even come in from Colorado to help deliver these meals. They always have a need for volunteers. And again, it kind of goes back to, if this community didn't have our volunteers, there would be a lot of things that would be left undone.
Now, we already covered some of the health and welfare programs that the fifth penny goes for. Did you have anything else on that you wanted to say?
The only other thing that I would add is I'll go back to our percentages that we distribute. And the one that we didn't mention is capital outlay. With our public safety, one of the things that I mentioned was the radios, but when you look at capital outlay, the majority of that money goes to our IT department. They provide the backbone and technology to keep those communication systems operating. And they are very cognizant with those funds, and I'll tell you what, they make them stretch. They're constantly looking for the best equipment and for the best price. And always mindful of how those dollars are used. Conservation and economic development, that kind of speaks for itself. We do contribute funds to the Economic Joint Powers Board, Development Powers Board, that is a local board here for economic development. We also contribute to LEADS. Did not mention recreation. That is probably it's the last there in your packet that you have, but we have a recreational advisory board that has representatives from Pine Bluffs, Albin, Burns, the city of Cheyenne. And what they do is look for recreational projects or things that they can add to. Obviously, they don't get a whole lot of funds, but they make very good use of what they do get. They've been involved with the new PA system and floor out at the Albin Community Center. They have provided funds to assist with the cost of fencing out at the Archer Equestrian Park, the Burns Plex fitness equipment, the Universal Playground that is over there off of Del Range. And then just recently we reopened the Clear Creek Park over off of Southwest Parkway. We've added a new shelter and some new playground equipment. We've got some other things that we're looking at adding as well on that. If you get a chance to go over there, that's really kind of an unspoken little gem. It's really nice. There's water running through it, new shelter, new restrooms. If you want to use the shelter, you can reserve those through our Public Works Department. They handle all of the maintenance and programming management for that.
Linda, you've been out talking to folks about this. What are some of the common questions you get, or maybe some misconceptions?
I think probably the biggest is the confusion between the fifth penny and the sixth. Granted, when you say them, they do sound a little bit alike, but they are used differently. They are both optional taxes that we as commissioners take to the voters every time they are up for renewal, giving the voters of Laramie County a choice to tax themselves for these projects or for in support of these particular items that we use as funding for. I think overall people are pretty supportive of infrastructure projects. I mean, we've heard that with the sixpenny. Let's keep this to our infrastructure projects and not a lot of wants. This supports needs within our county. Granted, we could always use more money to support those organizations, but this is one way that the whole county can get involved in helping those organizations.
Anything else you'd like to add, or does that pretty well cover it?
It pretty well covers it. The city and the county have a little bit different method of distributing the funds. The city looks at prioritizing particular projects. They've already got theirs identified that they're going to be using theirs for, and have a predetermined amount that they're going to use. And when they get priority 1 funded and completed, then they look at priority 2 and to begin funding that. The county basically works off of a percentage. This allows our agencies that receive this funding to have a better idea as to how to budget for those revenues. And granted, especially with Public Works, they have to set a lot of that aside so that they can build up that reserve to support the projects, especially when it comes to buying equipment and building roads.
Now, if somebody would like you to come out and speak to a group about this in the next month, would you be willing to do that?
Certainly. You can call the county commissioner's offices and set something up with Val, and any of the commissioners will come out and will visit with you, your group. I know that on the 9th of October, the League of Women Voters has a presentation that they have scheduled at 8 o'clock in the council chambers. And then on the 16th, they also have a presentation scheduled there in conjunction with candidate forums for either county commission or city council.
Glenn, anything you'd like to ask? Okay, I guess that'll do it. Thank you for coming in this morning.